first of all, I want to thank Paulina, Jose, for organizing the event, for encouraging CMN and Deputy, who had organized a similar event about 2 months ago in Stanford. And it's great to have a continuation of discussion of these issues. So very briefly, I want to take no more than 10 minutes of time, because if you're like me, you're and there's been an inundation of information, of different opinions, of views and analysis. But what I want to try and do is to bring it back down to two very simple questions. They deal first with the definitions against humanity that we've been discussing today. We've talked about unfamiliar definitions. We've also talked about modern definitions and how that impacts on Mexico. So, and I'll show you why that's relevant for documentation work. Secondly, I think we've also talked about different legal forums and how legal forums require different types of facts, different types of information, and again, that affects the information process. It affects the decisions that NGOs take when they're compiling information for different international fora. It affects the decisions of prosecutors and investigators. So very briefly, I'm going to talk about why we developed, the Case Matrix Network developed toolkits to support the investigation and documentation of acts either that may be gross human rights violations or core international crime, talk about how we feel we can strengthen that through collection, analysis, and kind of conclusion, the three key steps of fact-finding or documentation. So first, why we decided to support, or why we decided to develop toolkits for investigation and documentation. Observations that the Case Matrix Network has made from work with national jurisdictions, but also international or hybrid tribunals in more than 41 countries, we've come up with a few sort of set of analyses or general observations. First, that these sorts of violations usually occur in extraordinary situations. The state rarely has a standby capacity or capacity at the time of the acts to respond. And it often happens in periods of transition, in social crisis, or in armed conflict. Within that kind of specific problems, you find that there are often different reactions and responses. Different bodies recover or document or gather different types of information. And here in Mexico, it's no different, with the disagreement over the figures of how many people there have been disappeared, how many instances of torture and murder. So the normal status is limited response or limited capacity of the state to respond and also engage with or different types of challenges. And then also that, I mean, as you can see on the screen, confusion over the facts and figures, and this usually results in some degree of confusion, mistrust between the different actors involved in pursuing justice or accountability. The exceptional status is that the state has a standby capacity to respond quickly and that investigations or cases might take place at different international fora. This has come up in the conversation today in terms of how many cases are appropriate. Are 6 high-level persons high-level persons appropriate for such a high-scale set of patterns? And these are all important issues to discuss, but not ones that I'm going to really touch on, other than to give you examples of the problems that we see. Second problem, when we come down to very basic documentation and fact work, we talk about smoking gun. You very rarely find the smoking proves comprehensively that X person was responsible for committing Y and Z against another person. I think under the civil law system you use flagrantia in the act. Very rarely happens, and it very rarely thinking about these kinds of what you have. It means we have to we have many different types of information or evidence, and here is a quick compilation of them from the classic kind of sets of interviews with victims, with witnesses, with accused persons, forensic, satellite imagery, media, news, and then evidence or basis that may be accrued from various different sources. And nowadays we're seeing more and more the use of social media, of Twitter, of YouTube, of citizen kind of reportage, all of which can contribute towards how we document this work or these types of violations. The second stage, we move into analysis. As we're talking potential criminal investigations or criminal cases, you have to begin to analyze all of that information gathered according to different types of legal frameworks. You know, you want to satisfy international criminal law threshold, or you may be looking at comparing between different types of legal forum or legal options. And finally, this is usually the output. You want to see a criminal case, you want to see an individual standing trial for the violations that have been identified and collected. But when you're starting, it often feels like there's a haystack and you need to find it. Where do you begin? It's quite a bewildering and challenging situation for civil society as well as for investigators and prosecutors. And so the CMN has developed a toolkit, the investigation and fact-finding toolkit, which rotates around a database. We're full of acronyms. I'm going to try not to refer to these acronyms, but just describe what they do. So as I've just shown, there are basically three core steps of documentation or fact work related to the issues that we're discussing. The collecting of information, where you may identify and locate materials, you obtain, verify, and then maybe register that information. Analysis, the second phase, where you may corroborate, synthesize, structure, and organize that information according to perhaps the conclusion or the output that you may be driving towards. And then the output, and there are many different types of outputs in documentation and fact work. It may be reports to international bodies, it may be complaints towards national authorities, communications to the ICC, or even the opening of case files. But we can see these three key phases. Within the database that we have constructed, its acronym is IDOC. I'm going to say it once in case that stays with you in the future. So this database follows the process of fact work, from acting as a basic kind of repository of all of the different types of evidence or information that you gather, text, video, photographs, maps, etc. It allows you to analyze and compare that information and to begin to organize it according to different categories, so victims, protected objects, testimonies, context, incidences, and suspects. And then it allows you, from that kind of compilation and creation of different catalogues, to determine either facts, institutional involvement, what we've been discussing here, human rights cases or criminal law. And this is a little bit how it looks like in the process of working. You throw in a lot of information of different documents in the registration or collection phase, and then you can begin to analyze or catalog that information in the square boxes, and then the outcome will be one or more, perhaps, of the sort of triangles on the top. Yeah, there was one thing I wanted to say. I'm trying to find my notes. Yeah, earlier econometrics, statistical analysis, etc., and how that can be useful for trying to determine what kind of legal classification you give to a series or pattern of violations or practices. And within the database or the toolkit, there is in fact that capacity or that potential to draw statistics and provide a basis to make comparisons with other statistical evidence or material. How we provide that we create databases and we adapt them for our partners, and we provide it to our partners, and then we support our partners, and they get on and do the dirty work, the hard work, We are working with Comisión Mexicana exactly for that process. The tools without cost to users based on an agreement, and as you can see, I'm not going to time, but security, privacy and confidentiality protocols that we have in place to ensure that that material is both protected and secure. Finally, this is part of a broader project in 7 different countries. We are also working with Colombia and Georgia, which are perhaps in a similar, well, in preliminary examination phase, although the way that we're working with them is quite different. Finally, if you want to find out more, we have a blog, we're on Facebook, and you can find us on LinkedIn. And I hope we can go for lunch, or we have some discussions, I'm not sure, but thank you very much.
Bien, muchas gracias a Emilie.